We wanted to have an understanding of how these students thought about literacy. So, I was rather fearful that Shauna Faber would be here and then would say, what do you know about assessing courses? Not a whole lot. But anyway, so I did go to the literature a wee bit to have a little look. I mean, in honesty, what I suppose surprised me a little bit was that the kinds of formative and summative assessment that we teach our teacher candidates is not a whole lot different than assessing a course or a program and so forth. What we're really doing is we're looking to see whether it achieves the expectations that we want it to, and if not, how it can inform future design of those particular courses or programs. So this was a quote, actually. So we actually followed this assessment loop somewhat. You may gasp in appreciation of my graphic organizing. Same. Isn't it nice? Thank you, Marianne. So gathering evidence, interpreting it, and then using it to either enhance our program or to let us know something about the work that we're doing here at UBC. So there are different levels of assessment, and the red stuff shows what we decided to do. And that was, of course, that we're doing the course assessment. It's up to Shauna to do the program assessment. And then actually, Marianne had been doing some reading recently on institutional assessment that's happening within the American frame.
Yeah.
And you might be comment just a little bit.
Through the group that I belong with, the Literacy Researchers Association in the States, the states are going through a huge assessment of their teacher education programs. They're actually rating each of the colleges of education around how successful they are at producing teachers that can ultimately raise literacy scores, ultimately teach, and most are making very poor grades. And so this has really been quite interesting in how we're sort of reconceptualizing teacher education programs, and there's been a lot of controversy around that, and so I think this is very timely for the kinds of things that we're doing as well.
So we're going to look at a course. We decided to do this in January. The only course that we finished was 350, which is really the foundation course of literacy in our department. So what we decided we wanted to do, we didn't want to do some of the testy kinds of things. That just was not for us. So really, what we decided to do was look at an assignment that the students had completed to see if it met the objectives, both the assignment itself and then our course objectives. This seminar reports on the course-based assessment of assignment 1 of language and literacy 350. I think it goes on to you, Marianne.
Yes. So just to give you a little bit of contextual information regarding this particular course, as we said, it's because of the new program we had to rewrite the course. Margot was instrumental in that. So I was responsible for teaching the KIPP cohort, which is the kindergarten and primary program. And I did the 351, which is the classroom discourses, and then the 350 and the 351, which is the assessment. And so the course was actually, as you see, to give the students, the teacher candidates, an overview of the knowledge, skills, and attitudes they required to teach and implement language and literacy programs. Now, you need to understand that the BEd students, I'm sure you do, who come in have absolutely very little knowledge about what constitutes good literacy practice and how to teach it. And we wanted to, it's a very much a foundational course, so we really wanted to explore how we can move them as people who are coming from various disciplines into how they can teach effectively in the classroom. So we wanted to make sure that they understood that children learn language and literacy at different rates and that they need differentiated instruction and support. And we found that overall in most of the school advisors, the school situation, this is something that the teacher candidates really need, is to understand how to implement differentiated instruction and make sure that all learners are supported. And so some of the beliefs about the LLED 350 is that learning, of course, is a complex process, and it's not linear, and that learners need to create meaning, and that was a big part of their understanding. and that knowledge is socially constructed, and so we tried to set up the assignment so that there was a lot of peer-to-peer interaction. And also the metacognitive process reinforces learning, so getting them to think about what they're thinking about, things that they know that they need strategies in order to understand some of the things they're going through and how to do it in a dialogic way. So those were the tenets that underpin that particular course. And so, of course, the objectives for this particular assignment is exactly what we talked about, is we wanted them to share their beliefs about literacy. That was a really important point about this particular course, and how they were going to understand the notion that literacy is social practice, and how, of course, we wanted to infuse a digital component and technological component, and how that could actually communicate learning and contribute to the others, to learning of others. And interestingly enough, and I'll go into this a little bit more, is our students are very good at social media, but in terms of implementing it in the classroom and how the best ways to go about in presentation mode, they had very, very little knowledge. So this became a very important component to the assignment. And so our data sources, the KIPP cohort, actually the numbers were 38 in this particular cohort. We were quite overprescribed, in my opinion, having to mark all those assignments. But they chose to be in this cohort because of the focus on the kindergarten and primary program. I beg your pardon? Oh, we had two that wouldn't sign off. That's right. I beg your pardon. So I stand corrected. These particular candidates were aware that if they needed to teach kindergarten in the public school system, that they would need some particular coursework, orientation to kindergarten and to primary, and this helped to satisfy some of the requirements that they knew they were going to go into in order to get a position. So they were very keen to be able to be in this cohort. And so the particular number that we had, 36, it was collected from the pre-service teachers that Simon has informed, as Margot had said. They were in the last year's, actually no, they're just finishing up now. They'll finish in August 2013. And what we did is we looked at the artifacts for evidence of their understanding and beliefs about literacy. And this is my third year with the KIPP cohort, and in my opinion, this group was incredibly reflective this year. And I really believe, and this is part of the findings, but I really believe it was because of the context of this particular assignment and how it really brought them together and shared beliefs. I think it was really fundamental in terms of creating a community. And we'll go into that a little bit more after. So what they had to do, this was an outline of what they had to do is they had to, in the first part of the assignment, and this is the data collected, I think we only did the three parts or two parts we looked at?
We did all three.
We did all three.
The interview we didn't get to yet.
That's right. So they have, they were asked to find 3 different definitions of literacy and or descriptions or types of literacy. And this was really interesting because we tended to get, I know I'm going into the findings, but we tended to get dictionary versions. Or we got really sophisticated research-based. Someone actually contacted someone in the UK, a professor, and had a discussion around what literacy meant to them. Actually, it was a former colleague of ours, which is really interesting. And then we asked them how do they define literacy, which was interesting. And then we asked them to brainstorm 3 unique areas of knowledge, and from these areas, what it meant to be literate in that particular area. And so, taking that particular area, we asked them to explain the steps that they went through in order to achieve that particular literacy, and what the terms, the vocabulary that was associated with each of those areas, and how would they characterize themselves. Sort of working on Jim G's version of discourses with big D, little d, the discourses, the community groups that you belong to. How would you associate, what would you call this particular group who share those literacies? And also, what are the reaction of other people to your chosen literacy? So that was really quite interesting, a lot of different levels. And then part two, what they had to do is they had to do a presentation with a digital presentation, and they had to include these particular steps. And so we gave them quite a bit of free rein in terms of what they wanted. Prezi, iMovie, and Modo, I actually had to teach how to do a lot of that because they didn't know actually how to use those presentation tools, so that was interesting. So that's you.
Oh, it's me. I'm just going to say right off the bat, there were two other small things that maybe kind of underpin this. One is that we really felt that, and this is rooted in the literature as well, if you want people to change, they need to surface their beliefs. So otherwise, if you don't surface those beliefs and talk about them, they'll continue to hold them, and it will get in the way of new ideas. So if you bring those pre-existing beliefs to the surface and can discuss them, then you can move students forward. So that was one of the kind of underpinnings that we thought about when we were putting this together. So I just wanted to say that. The second thing is, this was a total brute to mark for the instructors. This is huge, and it was enormous, and there were a lot of complaints. Yet, nonetheless, all of the instructors felt it was worthwhile.
Yes, pretty much. We'll do it.
And we'll do it again. We decided that. So I brought together these. Actually, there were three rather diverse pieces of data. One was the students' definitions and their own definitions. The second was actually the digital presentations that they brought to the table. And the final piece was a reflection. And I was reminded of Naz's gave a presentation, one of the graduate students in early childhood, who said, I ended up with all this data and then realized the questions were all wrong. So I realized that my questions were all wrong, and I had to, it almost seemed like you would have to look at each section separately, but if you went back to the objectives, you could actually pull it together as one data set. So that's what I ended up having to do. And this really is a constant comparative method. I just set it up in a rather snifty little organizer. No, okay, so the course objectives, which again I went back to the objectives we started with, which was to examine and share existing beliefs about literacy. And what we discovered was that the sharing techniques really helped them become aware of diverse literacy backgrounds and skills. In other words, this was where they really surfaced what they believed, but then shared it and heard other perspectives and other ideas. So in the process of developing that 3 to 5 minute electronic sort of digital presentation and then sharing it, they really learned an incredible amount about others' beliefs about what literacy was all about.
What was interesting about this is because we had such a large number sharing, we had to do it within the designated time because we didn't have that much time. So they were to post them on the Vista web as well. And one of the complaints was, stop posting it because it's taking me away from doing my other coursework, because they were so involved in looking at how other people's literacies evolved that it was quite a distraction, a good distraction for them. So we were going to I'll give you an example of what one of the presentations, we'll give you two through this presentation. This is in particular Nikki's, so let's see.
He's blew me away, by the way.
So again, you need to look broadly at literacy. So literacy, yep.
Nothing on the screen.
It isn't? Oh, right. Okay. So what I need to do,
Do you need to log on to the internet?
no, I'm on the internet, but it doesn't do it.
They won't launch in the window there. But if you just hit escape and get out of your PowerPoint, maybe.
Okay.
I'll just do that.
Does she know what you're doing?
Well, I'm not really sure, because this is what happened because of my presentation, because it's on presentation mode, and often if you don't, sorry, you said to hit escape.
Which is why I suggested this.
Okay. And so,
That's beautiful.
just everybody, this would be,
So you're seeing it on your screen?
I see it on my screen. So it's
Maybe it's just the mirroring?
yeah.
No,
it
not
is.
yet. She's
It
not
was
still
back
yet on her
just
screen.
quick.
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
Here we go.
There we go. It's coming up.
Okay, so, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to be able to see this. You have to take it off presentation mode, otherwise it doesn't.
Here it comes.
Here she is.
Come on.
Momentarily.
Yes, technology. technology is always the best, isn't it?
Oh, I love that font
Yeah.
style. Isn't that a great font?
Yeah. So I'll have to, it's self-explanatory, but she went through this. There's just one little clip. So here she talks about literacy, how her 3 definitions here, and you can see that they're from simple to the more complex. And that was a really interesting thing for them to find out that there was a wide range of literacy definitions. And then they had to compare it to what they believed literacy was about. So that was an eye-opener for a lot of them, because they were very much, it's reading and writing and solely that. And so now through the definitions, they've broadened their notion of what literacy is. So that was the first step. And so her literacy was Vancouver Public Transport. And so what does it mean to be literate in Vancouver Transit? And so knowing what the modes of transportation are, the bus, the SkyTrain, the community bus, the sea bus, and of course the Canada Line. And then knowing system maps and routes. So this is beyond just reading and writing. It's being able to interpret maps, multimodal types of things. So she has bus routes there. The transit map, which is very difficult to read if you don't have that literacy. The trip planner, which is through Google, so on the internet, and of course the Fair Zone map. And I don't know about you, but I can never figure this out.
The Fair Zone.
Yeah, exactly. Right, it's supposed to be this one. And so then there's the understanding of the proper fares and passes. So of course this is a new, the Compass Pass, so you had to really be aware of knowing where the best deals were and how you were going to access those. Is it a 1-zone, 2-zone, 3-zone, or concession fare? If you're a U-Pass user, look at how many you use there. That this is a single fare pass, fare saver. Again, and beware that there you have to make sure that that's printed on the back of the ticket, that you will get penalized if you don't buy your ticket. So how she learned to take transit, this was the next part of how she began her literacy. Yeah. So that was just a short shot. But what was interesting, so she learned this a lot of times. She had to do it alone. So that's what, if you're on a bus or in a transit system and you don't know quite where to get off, you have to look at a lot of the signs. So in this, or trust other people who in this case were not there for her. So some resources that helped her, of course, the buzzer. I mean, I don't know if you are literate in transit, but some of these things you might not. You can go to the TransLink website and find out. You can have the TransLink link on your mobile phone. That will help you. And the real key to becoming an expert in transit literacy was practice, practice, practice. But isn't that the truth for all kinds of literacies that we have? Persevere through rejection.
United service.
That's good.
Be fearless.
Yes.
And just keep walking through.
Wow.
Yeah. What awaits you if you do? Yeah, Vancouverites, tourists, commuters like you. So, talking about that community and who shares that community with you. So it's actually an interesting group of people. If you don't take transit, you probably don't have that knowledge at all. So that one was quite interesting for us. Okay, so now we get to escape. Let's see if we can go back to the PowerPoint.
It's interesting how she set it up there. It was walk,
Yeah.
trudge,
Yes.
trudge,
That
and
was-
then leap.
Yeah, that was very deliberate in
I
the
could
way
see
she chose to do that too. Okay, so this is the second one. So I think that this was you, Margot.
Is this me?
Yeah.
I just wanted to also say that while there's a temptation to think if you're going to be doing a study, you might, Marianne's doing the study with her group, that she might have focused on some of this perhaps more in a more concentrated fashion. We actually didn't do this until after Christmas, or after the December break. So this was all done just as a regular course. None of this was done in any way with the thought that we would actually look at it. So we were particularly impressed by that as well, that this was just as it unfolded.
Exactly.
So the second objective was my trying to figure out what their notions of literacy were, how that developed, whether or not they got a sense of that. And so what really, in the end, I found very interesting was when you took everything together and their definitions, they really were saying that literacy in the 21st century is complex, multifaceted, and included notions of literacy as social practice. They all came to that in the end. Now, what was I going to say? There was something I was just going to add there about, I can't remember. Anyway, okay. So some of the definitions, interpretation, meaning making, using the skills and knowledge of disciplines, subject areas, and text. I actually thought I had a little grounded theory going here. I said to Marianne, but we decided that was a little bit over the top.
It was good.
They taught and learned through communication, bidirectional, one of their words. I love it. I'm going to drop it into all my conversations here on in social context and applied to personal interest, need, and which is ongoing throughout life. It's reiterative in that ability and knowledge built through this process. So in the end, they really did put together a very complex notion of what literacy was in the 21st century.
And learning about who they are as learners,
Yes.
and connecting the diversity between all the literacy. So that's where that whole sense of community and the realization that they were very diverse learners, even if they were quite homogeneous in coming to a teacher education program. How they learned different literacies certainly was interesting. And so this is...
So that's, I'll just leave that, I'll talk about some of the evidence very quickly. This is so boring, right? But really, this was how it kind of played out, the kinds of comments they made. Skills. Obviously, they still think reading and writing and learning to decode and write is really important. They also thought that subject knowledge was really, really important. That you needed to know about something in order to be able to interpret something and so forth. Meaning making, that the whole process of literacy was a meaning making process. Social context of it, that you needed text knowledge. I thought that was interesting. So you'll see what I mean in just a minute. Application. What do you do with this stuff? Well, I think the transit's a perfect example. Is that you'd actually have to apply what you know about literacy. That's what it's all about. It's about using it in your life. And then personal. We have personal interests, so we might be more interested in one thing than another, or we might need something more than another. I mean, I need public transport. Many of you don't. And then, but it really is a lifelong process. It grows and it changes as our needs and who we are grow and change. So, skills. And these are just quick, very quick. I probably should just let you read them. These are just very quick quotations from them. Ability to read and write, subject knowledge, having knowledge in a certain field, multimodal, the social context that it's really bidirectional, and so forth. Moving on, don't it's sort of a bit tedious. Text knowledge, take a map, somebody said, which I thought was great. The application, so it's applying your knowledge to make decisions, set goals, solve problems, and communicate effectively. Personal, depends what we're interested in. And it's a complex skill that can never be fully mastered or perfected. A person's literacy is not finite, but continues to grow indefinitely. Literacy is an ever-changing and lifelong process. I absolutely love that. And you pick them up in all kinds of things. And I think you're the next one, are you?
I can't remember. Okay. Oh, yes, I am. So then we talked about how they had to now develop their beliefs and how they learned into this presentation. And to make sure that they included images, sound, gestures, those kinds of things. So I want to show you another example because I think this one is again, this is someone who did an iMovie. And I think you'll quite enjoy this one because it's quite different.
As a writing instructor, or difficulty one can have when trying to, only through verbal language, instruct your student how to ride. At a very young age, I fell in love with horses through the encouragement from my mother, who was also a horse rider when she was a child. To become literate in horseback riding, I took both riding lessons locally in Vancouver and joined the Vancouver Pony Club, an international youth organization devoted to educating youth about horses and riding. It was necessary to take lessons in order to be able to proficiently look after a horse and ride it correctly. When learning to ride and look after your horse, you are presented with a brand new vocabulary that you must familiarize yourself with, such as dressage, a style of riding where horse and rider are expected to perform from memory a series of predetermined movements, or tap box, the box you carry your brushes in. For children or adults who have never been on a horse before, we as instructors start them out sometimes without a saddle, the piece of equipment one usually sits on. One does this so as that the rider may have a better feel of the horse beneath them and how their body moves with the horse and the importance of balance. This non-verbal understanding or literacy with the horse helps the rider to feel more comfortable on the horse. It is one of the first and most important lessons an instructor can teach the new rider.
Good work. Oh, well done. 2 hands on your head. Oh, good job. Well done. I'm impressed.
When students become more familiar and comfortable with the horse, riding instructors can start to help the rider further their knowledge by giving the rider more responsibility. Often, though, we must scaffold on the rider's prior knowledge until they are able to proficiently prep the horse for riding, such as brush it correctly and tack it up, which is to put the leather equipment or tack on the horse.
Your fingers in the air. Is it tight? Not tight. We're drilling again. You happy? Ready? Elbow up. You stick the little end of the buckle up, okay? Good job on this side. Ready? Oh, there we go. You turn your back. You gotta turn it back. Take it. Good job. Now this ring has to go off a little bit on that. All right.
As a writing teacher, one is always having to come up with different and creative literary terms and meanings in order to relay to our students a sense of understanding of what movement they should be feeling the horse is beneath them. They need to understand that they are at all times conversing subtle instructions to their horse, just by shifting the weight in their seat bones, or when they squeeze their feet and legs on the belly of the horse to make it move a certain way. Or lastly, what the rider does with their hands, which is important because they are holding onto the reins, a leather piece of equipment which is then connected to the horse's mouth through a bit, a metal bar in the horse's mouth. Here we see Kaya using verbal and non-verbal literacy in order to relay the meaning of posting, which is sitting up and down in your saddle at either the walk, trot, or canter. Horseback riding can be for many different types of riders and their learning abilities. This is my friend Rachel. She has cerebral palsy, but has been riding since the age of 5. She's now 21. I asked Rachel how it was that she came to learn to ride and what she found easy about it.
The instructor that I have now, she makes it so easy to understand, and then I feel like I've accomplished something, you know.
Is it because of the language she uses that it's easy to understand?
Yeah.
Yeah?
She takes her time explaining.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. And when she's teaching you something new, is it scary, or does she make you feel safe doing it?
It sometimes can be a little bit scary, but, you know, I've been riding with Gail for 2 years now.
Yeah.
So we have a great relationship, so I know that she wouldn't have me do anything scary. But, you know, I love it when she challenges me.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, when I first started riding, I was very hunched over, and then I became very straight. So that was a bit difficult. And also
hopes to one day make it to the Paralympic Games in horseback riding. One can never truly master horseback riding. With every rider and horse, there comes a new relationship, and thus a new literacy or understanding of each other must be formed. It is only through continuing to actively ride, take lessons, and teach, both oneself and others, can an equestrian hope to build upon their own prior knowledge and hope to progress forth in their learning.
Yeah, I've been singing that in my
I
head.
know.
So, in terms of, oh, no, we don't want that. We don't want.
I think it's not over.
No, we really don't. You can see how they blended the vocabulary, the components of the assignment really quite nicely. And what we also found is that in doing this assignment, it really reached those Bachelor of Ed program strands, so that there was inquiry and dialogic understanding. So they investigated their own literacy practices, they inquired, they also had that dialogic understanding when they shared it with their partners and with the people who they made the movie with or without. There's also that sense of social and ecological justice and diversity. They really found that there was diverse literacies between all of them, and that really strengthened the relationship of who they were as a particular cohort and what they needed to take into the classroom to actually replicate that sense of community. And also the whole notion of language literacies and cultures is that it really broadened what was meaningful to them in terms of language and literacies. So,
look, okay. We certainly felt that it met the objectives, both of the course that we'd set up and actually the teacher education program and the kinds of things it was asking us to do. I always remember, what was it? Amplifications and echoes.
Oh, yes.
Dear God, amplifications, I don't know what that means. But anyway, but it did actually. It meant that sometimes we put these things up front, but that they should always be echoed through our courses. So the strands really are echoed through that particular assignment and thus through that particular course. They really came to understand literacy as social practice. I think the examples we give make that absolutely clear. They really understood the broader 21st century notion of literacy as being multi-literacies. Again, I think our examples underscore that. That was incredibly successful. And it seems to really support, as Marianne said, she felt that she had the benefit of this assignment throughout the rest of the courses that she was an instructor for. That's not a cool way of saying it, isn't it? The 351, but through the other language and literacy courses. So that it set up a kind of a community, it set up a common ground for students to talk about themselves and others, and yet to have a very clear understanding of who they were.
right. And for faculty, as I was a faculty advisor with this particular cohort as well, what I found is how they approached in their practicum students who came from diverse backgrounds, and there was a whole new appreciation of what funds of knowledge these children brought. And I thought they went in there knowing with that knowledge, knowing that they needed to really address the diverse needs of the classroom, knowing what they went through as well. So,
here was the difficulty. And we really, Marianne and I have talked about this long and hard. We really feel the assignment itself was very successful. I think it set up all of the kinds of things we've talked about. The truth of the matter is, while we tend to use this term, what's the term? Pejorative?
yes.
We privilege reading and writing. The truth of the matter is we have to teach that. And we have to teach decoding. We absolutely do. There's no way around it. We want our teacher candidates to understand the broad sweeps of literacy, but when they go into a classroom, they must be able to teach the kids to read. It's on screens, it's in the materials that they constantly interact with, and so on and so forth. And it was there that we got a little bit stuck. Marianne has been working with the graduate cohort, looking at supporting struggling readers and writers, and in fact that is still, it is kind of an underpinning of that cohort, is that even seasoned teachers are struggling with how you teach kids to decode. So, while we accomplished what we wanted to, we then are left with the problem of how, and the students do understand this, by the way. Their reflections showed this. They understand who the kids are going to be in front of them, but now what? They need those strategies to engage kids. So, so that's where we have to go next. We haven't got very far. We've talked back and forth about it right now, and you can jump in. But we're wondering if when we look at 351, if we don't really have to really focus in a lot more on the sort of skills of decoding. It's the truth of the matter. You know, because that's what our teacher candidates need when they go into the classroom. But you go ahead.
But what it did, I think, is opened a space for those kinds of discussions to happen. And so rather than, that skills-based driven instruction that sometimes we get hooked into when we're teaching, there's other avenues to think about. There's other ways, I think, that they can approach, or just an appreciation of, if I struggled myself in learning a particular literacy, how am I going to make this plain? What strategies can I use to help the students work metacognitively? Where can I go for resources? What kind of vocabulary, what kind of meta-language can I use? All through your primary program, how you so beautifully, Marianne, write about that. I think that needs to be really specific, but my sense is, in the end, I felt very, very good about them going on to the next part, more than I have in the past. And I'm not quite sure what that was about, but it just seemed to be, it seemed to be a really nice way to lay that foundation from which the platform forward.
That's what we said. It's almost like this would be lovely to have as a course, and then the courses that follow would be much more sort of, what Marianne's talking about here, much more sort of about how do we take what we've learned in this foundations course and then put it into practice, and what kinds of things do we need in order to be successful in moving the children in our classes forward.
Yeah, exactly.
So we feel this was fabulously successful. It absolutely accomplished everything we wanted it to. Our question is, now what?
And I think, this is always the issue, isn't it? You've got the theory and research, so what do I do with this?
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of thinking that if they could do some sort of an activity, reflective activity in their practicum classroom, where they take these notions, those, as their skills, and actually sort of look at what's going on in the classroom in terms of the classroom context, because they're thinking literacy is in the language arts, period.
Yes. Yeah.
Instead of, like that article I wrote about how you've got your classroom community literacy. So all of the different things that they do in the classroom that they don't think of as teaching reading in kindergarten and grade 1.
Yeah.
The materials in the play center, the fact that you have to sign out to go to the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
Colleen Politano was always brilliant at getting kids, she'd always say, oh, my hands are tight, write me a note to remind me. So they start to think about all of those social practices in the classroom, and then think about what, how can I, focus in.
And if you see a
with
child struggling, what strategy do I need to?
Exactly. Because, it's just the same if you're a coach of a baseball team, you observe what's happening when the kids are playing, and then you say to the kids, you know what? We would have won that game except so many times you didn't catch the ball on the outfield.
Yeah.
So, what do we need to do? We need to work on the throwing and catching. There's nothing wrong with doing a skill lesson when kids know why they're doing it, and then working at transferring that. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's just.
But don't do it if it's not needed. I'm always reminded of your story. Your grade 2 student who was going to be held back. They read at a grade 12 level, but they were going to be held back because they didn't know their phonics.
That they couldn't tell the difference. It's a show. It was a kid I had who
So
is,
don't bother with things that you,
Yeah.
so be able to assess
Who
what
is
kids are doing well.
and he couldn't tell in grade 2 the difference between a shorty and a short eye. And so the teacher wanted to retain it, plus his eye-hand coordination was poor, his printing looked like chicken scratch, right? But I was doing an individualized reading program, and we had to do an assessment, you know, and I think, oh my God. And then the school district mandated that we did the day's McGinnity. And he was off the draw. He was past grade 12. And
But that really resonates with what Vicki Purcell-Gates talks about, the side of the pool skills. So
Yeah.
she talks about, you do, when you're learning a new stroke, you pull them to the side of the pool, you instruct them in that particular skill, go out and practice it again.
yeah.
The other thing that we noticed too, that particularly with running records, which is another assignment that we do in the course, after, is that when the students are making miscues in their oral reading, and you tally what they're doing to find out their instructional reading level, very few teachers actually analyze those errors of what the children are doing and then teach to those. And I see that across the board with practicing teachers as well. They're great in getting the reading levels, but they don't actually look at. So that's where the graphophonics comes in, and the semantic, the cueing system. So it all blends in, but this is sort of the beginning point that takes us into the larger frame. And it actually, they understand it better. Once it's not as decontextualized, they can apply it to their own. So I think that we just have questions. That's the end of our presentation.
And we found it fun to do.
Yeah, it was really
A bit of a follow-up. We decide, well, we're going to do this for the students because they were kind enough to let us have access to their assignments, so we want them to know that we enjoyed looking at them, and this is what we found out. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to interview, did we decide 8?
Yes.
We're going to, did we decide how, a criteria? Well, it's a bit of a study on the run, this one, clearly. But we're going to interview 8 students to find out how they feel it fit into their year.
Right, and then how it played out in practice.
In their long practice. So we're going to sort of interview them about that. And then actually we have permission to do it again next year if we want to. But we haven't decided yet, have we? No, okay.
I think it would be great.
It would be, yeah, to do a follow-up to see if it's...
So I have a question. Now, you did this in December.
No, we did it in January and February.
Okay.
Oh, no, the assignment itself, sorry, Marianne.
Yeah, the assignment itself.
Was actually, it was due within the first 6 weeks of the
Okay,
school year.
that's what I'm
Really
wondering.
right off the bat, right?
Yeah,
I think it's such a wonderful assignment.
yeah, it is a wonderful
Yeah,
assignment.
it was so, I mean, I got caught up in it because it was, but you can imagine reading 38.
I was just
weeks
gonna say,
and watching 38. And I did it with pleasure because I wanted to see, and they really took hold of it. You can, lots of baking, lots of, but little baking
Sure.
literacies,
Sewing.
dance,
Knitting,
knitting,
dance.
sewing, yeah, a lot of really interesting knowledges that they brought. So it was really, it was fun to mark, but we had them reflect at each stage, and that grew to be a bit onerous after a while. Good information.
It's a gentle way
Yeah.
to get into being skills-based.
It is, but I also think, I mean, we owe that, that's part of what we do, but it's also it really addresses, I think, what we're trying to reimagine in terms of the program, and I think it really spoke well to where we're trying to go with reimagining literacy instruction and how courses are run. So I was quite delighted with this.
Well, it touches on the whole business of self-esteem. Wow, this was good. So you've brought in the whole concept of literacy. You've actually pulled it into self-esteem, because I'm a kid in the class and I don't speak English very well, but you're telling me, oh, but you know a lot. And I go, oh yeah, I actually do. And that literacy class, so I started to feel good about myself. That's good. But I also really, I personally am this. I really like that. That's this big one for me. Is that you say, okay, so actually you know a lot, but you know what now? to learn English, I'm now saying what I need to
Yes,
say.
yeah.
But to learn English, these are the skills you need. So then now when I come to learning English, not Punjabi, not Mandarin, but English, I go, oh, okay, so I already know this, literacy, but now to learn the English literacy, these are the things I have to learn in order to master it. Now it's okay, because it's just another literacy. And I think we owe it to the kids in the school, and this is something that I'm quite passionate about, is that for future candidates, that they themselves have the tools to teach that literacy. Because that little 4-year-old, 6-year-old kid is one day going to be 24. I don't think the world's going to change a lot. They may need this, like, I have a daughter who speaks Mandarin, a daughter who speaks Spanish. And it's fascinating to me, when we go somewhere, Rita has to speak Mandarin, I just watch her go, whatever she says, and I go, what's an answer? And I go, guess it. And I go, wow, having that language. So children who are learning, so I throw that intention to throw us off English for a minute, is we owe it to the kids to make sure they learn how to speak English well. Well, if they have to do that, the teacher has to. But now even the teacher candidate hopefully will understand.
But also they talk about, in their literacies, and I don't think they know they're doing that, they might because it's so early in the program, they're actually talking about the skills of literacy.
Yes.
They talk about vocabulary, the language of what it is of their literacy, the need to practice fluency,
Yes.
right, and so on and so forth. So it's all there, and the fact that you're constantly learning.
That's
I think these are all the languages of literacy. They just need to take that and apply it to other literacies that they've made. It could be visual. It doesn't necessarily have to be written. It could be visual, whatever kind of literacy that
That's
they're
right.
taking into the classroom.
Yeah,
and
it
the
takes
kinds
the
of things
fear
Marianne
off
was
of
talking about.
learning English. No, it's just another
I
literacy.
think we have to be really explicit about what you just said there to the teacher
Okay,
candidates.
yeah.
We're, as you know, with the new program,
Oh.
experiencing tensions. I love the word tensions. It covers a lot. So when I get calls now in this new role, thanks Sydney, from people who we know well, who have taught in this faculty and have really strongly held views about teaching language arts. I'm going to use that frame now because that's the frame that it comes to me. What has this course got to do with teaching language, learning how to teach language arts? What does this assignment in particular, and had this assignment, I've been questioned about it and needing to defend it. So I think it's really important as we shift, and I have to defend all sorts of things around inquiry and other things, is to be explicit about what this means. That first we have to look at this broad view of literacy, and that has changed. It's not just reading and writing. We make meaning in many ways. But to look at that and to look at all of the cognitive, all of the things you're saying, but also to be explicit about why we're doing this. Because I think that some are not seeing the why. They're seeing at face value, this doesn't look like what it used to look like. Why not? What's wrong with
Colleagues
you?
or teacher candidates?
Colleagues.
Because I think what it does for me, or what in my experience, what it has done for me, is that these candidates come in with no knowledge, no knowledge whatsoever. Thanks, Jane. And that I think to bring them to a place where they're ready to learn this particular discourse, classroom discourses, they really need to have those beliefs surface. They're coming from arts backgrounds, from science backgrounds. They've never investigated what it means. They're very entrenched in how they learn how to read and write. That comes out right. So it does provide a foundation. And I can see, that's why Margot and I had this big conversation about, but you're not teaching skills-based. You're not producing teacher candidates who are going to be able to teach language and literacy well.
But you're creating a foundation.
Well, that's what we
So
said.
we
We think
think
this
we
is
are.
a perfect foundation.
It makes sense. I think just being explicit.
About what, I mean, we could actually go through the movie, all of the transportation, and actually talk about the what do you call it, the 5 pillars of reading.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just sitting there. Now, the student may not know it.
No.
They've just looked at what it is that they do.
And that's where you start, but
Yes.
just drawing attention to it, perhaps so that it's not just us who articulates why this course exists. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because
it's just an assignment this morning.
I know, but it's interesting that it has been brought into question in our office
By people who are faculty.
by faculty.
In our department. maybe we should.
In several departments. Yeah.
This
interestingly.
particular assignment, or
No,
this
you know my latest saying, right? I've always said I was born to fight. Right?
No,
but I
and-
found a new lovely one that says, it is my duty as a human being to be pissed off. So I'm just letting Patsy have that one.
No, and change is hard for people. Change is really hard for people.
Well, in fact, we rooted this, honest to God, we rooted this in the literature about change.
Yes.
But if you want teacher candidates
Yes.
to change their
You have to
beliefs,
start looking.
you have to start
Where are you
looking
coming
up,
from?
yeah,
No,
and
I
raising it
totally
up and
understand.
talking about it.
But you know, the thing is, I mean, when we were planning this course, this literacy autobiography was an assignment that my students did. You changed it to make it, so they had to do the presentation. But the personal literacy autobiography was an assignment that I did for years.
There you go.
And I always did it, first thing off the bat, to get at, to get at their ideas, because they come in, particularly in the kindergarten, early
Yes.
literacy cohort, whatever,
Yeah.
they come in thinking it's about learning the alphabet,
Yeah.
and learning
Yeah.
and learning phonics, and that's the mindset. So,
No,
in
I
order
know.
to stop that,
I
that's
know.
exactly, I mean, you've taken it and evolved it and made it much better.
We understand that. We understand that. It's just that it has to, those in
So
the
if we
program.
present this again, we have to add that. We should go
No,
through and just look at it.
It's doing, it's being, what's the word, taking a meta look at it with the teacher candidates themselves. And just, why did we do this? What does this mean? What are the implications? It's just helpful. There we are.
Another space that I just want to add, if you want to situate a little bit more in the research, it just happens to be a little piece of my research, my doctoral research, where I watched children working with each other on their own and with siblings and parents and grandparents. And I was looking at the literacy practices, and one thing that came up again and again, and this isn't new, but it just came up in a strong, is that reciprocalness, that learning from each other. Like the grandparent would not know where, logically, what key to strike or whatever, so the grandparent would say, well, what would you do next? And the child would say, I'd do this. And the grandparent would say, wait, I've got some more information, experiential information you might not have. They don't say that, but, and they give it back, and it's that constant learning. And for an hour, I've watched a grandparent and a child just scaffold each other up at a rapid rate. And I think of what you've asked your students to do, work off of each other, teach each other, learn from each other, and then learn from each other in group. Literacy does occur in that method where we go from where we are, what you're saying, I've got a science background, and we learn from each other about literacy and how to be literate. And so I don't know if you've designed that on purpose, but or it's always been there, but that is so parallels what I see in children.
So is it, Wendy, a case of being proactive, so that rather than having to sort of defend, to actually, with an assignment, say, you know, this assignment, these are the learning outcomes.
Yeah.
for the
Oh, no,
assignment.
we looked at them together. I mean, some people find it very hard to change. They're not seeing language arts methods as a title anymore. And that's upsetting to them. So I don't think any amount of reasoning and walking them through the assignment and the rationale is necessarily going to change that view. And that's just how it is.
Do you know what that brings to mind?
I'm not worried about it. This
We're
sound
actually,
pedagogy, this is
Wendy,
sound,
so you know,
sound.
we've sketched out an article,
Yes.
and that would be a grand way to finish it for those who would be to look at a couple of them
Yeah.
and just see where the pillars of.
I think that's it. I think that people just have to be reoriented in their view.
And by the
They're
way,
just not
don't you love
seeing
it when
the
you,
familiar.
we just need to restate skills as pillars.
And then there's that Ellington article where he says,
I like it.
forget the
Skillers.
pillars, that's just part of it. There's also, what is it, the
Yeah, of
other
course it
nine?
is. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But you know, it is interesting because there has been a history of competing views of literacy within the faculty.
Of course.
Competing views of child development and so on.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't think that's,
And the world is moving along.
and the word is.
You know, if we look at UNESCO's, you know, if we take it to a very simplistic,
Yeah.
UNESCO's definition of literacy, I mean, it's blown wide apart now.
Oh, yeah.
If we look at our, even just the language arts hierarchy, like it's going past early primary. But I mean, it's changed. Huge. Like, stay with it, keep up. And this is what you're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the other forms
Wonderful
of
background,
helping people.
wonderful background.
Yeah,
Really is.
yeah.
It was so great. It was
So
very.
it was worthwhile?
Oh, very.
Okay. I think so.
And you know what and went to a big.
Oh, with this?
With the knowledge that they
Oh,
have,
yes.
they're not even gonna stop by the counter.
They're
They
not.
have the
The
black
bonus
cards.
cards, the flashcards.